Hey everyone, it's Elle from Creature of Joy, where I teach moms the Mojo method, which is bullet journaling for mothers. So, by the way, if you haven't checked it out yet, I teach moms how to bullet journal so they can simplify their time and other areas of their life and basically just help make things functional. So it's for moms who probably had really, organized lives at one point in time, and then they had children and kind of were just trying to figure out how to, be a good mom and balance things. So anyways, I've got this neat system. It can be really helpful. Be sure to check that out. Anyway, moving forward, before I go on with the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Okay, that's the best way to stay connected and get these tips. So today I wanted to talk about 5 words to think about when you are overcomplicating something. Okay, so we all have a tendency to overcomplicate things. Do you know what I mean? Some of us do it a little more than others, but there are certain areas of our life where, we get things complicated in our head and it stops us from making any progress. Have you ever felt like you just couldn't move the needle on a project, that you couldn't get started on a complicated work task, or you were procrastinating a project that you needed to have done months ago? Things like that. So those are classic examples of ways that we are getting in our own way. So let's talk about 5 words to help defeat those self-sabotage habits. Number 1, by the way, no particular order or ranking here. These are just random. But the first word I'd like to talk about when you're overcomplicating things is simplify. So obviously, if things are complicated, what do you need? Simplicity. So what do you need to be thinking about when you know you need to simplify things? What can you take out of this situation? What can you do that will have less steps? So if you have this project to, buy Christmas gifts for your family, how you make less steps? Do you need to have a unique gift for every single member of your family, extended family, your children? Come up with a budget for each different person and then go shop at all these different stores? Or can you maybe think of one good gift that would fit for all of those people? Maybe a book that you read that you know that they'd all really like, or maybe have a couple different themes, things like that. Less steps. Another one is, how do you spend less time in that area? If you spend just too much time on something, maybe what you really need to do is just give yourself a time limit and take it, take all the extra stuff out. Simplify your standards. Have you ever felt like maybe your standards are just way too high for small, simple, and honestly, kind of insignificant tasks? Maybe you have a really important project, but if you make every little subtask in that important project super important, your super important project's never going to get done, or it's going to be really complicated in the process. And who wants to live life like that? With the pressure that every little thing has to be perfect. So, when you have a big project, especially when you have a big project or something important, my advice to you, lower your standards on all the little subtasks, okay? And we'll talk about, that actually comes up again on one of your other words. So word number 2, focus. I feel like some of you probably think you are pretty focused, but are you? Do you, do the dishes and listen to an audiobook and talk to your kids and also cook supper at the same time? How many of you are multitaskers? You. Come on, raise your hands. I know you're out there. We all do it. We all multitask. And, studies go to show that multitasking does not make us any faster, more efficient, doesn't make us better at what we're doing, doesn't make our time go by fast. We're not actually getting things done any quicker because we're doing 3 things at once. Our brain actually cannot multitask. It's just switching on and off. So really what you're doing is just using a lot of willpower on 3 different projects rather than, just focusing on one thing. And you burn yourself out a lot more. And if you're a go-getter, you might not even recognize when you're burned out. You're just less efficient though, and you don't even notice it. So focus. Pick a task. Pick a time. Don't always try to force something to happen if it's not the right time. I wanted to take this video. I had to lower standards and I had to pick a time. I know that I can't do videos like this around dinner time when the kids are getting cranky. But kids just playing on the bed, and I knew I could make it work. So right timing, focus, and sometimes if you need to, just, there's something called a Pomodoro timer. Those are really helpful. Download a Pomodoro timer. They're little 20-minute timers, or just use the timer on your phone. Set a 15-minute focus timer, and don't do anything else but that one thing that you needed to do. If you're a procrastinator, what's the hardest thing in that project that's, that hurdle that you're not able to overcome? What's the one thing that's stopping you from getting started on that thing that you want to do? Do you have to, email a particularly difficult client? Well, sit your butt down in the chair, set a 15-minute timer, and start drafting the email. No pressure. Doesn't have to be perfect. Draft an email, 15 minutes. Don't do anything else. Don't research how to talk to a difficult client. Don't start, cooking dinner or eating lunch while you're just that one thing. And I promise you, you focus like that, you will get it done. Word number 3, fear. Okay. Fear. This gets a lot of us. And the tricky thing is, if you view yourself as a strong personality, sometimes we don't always recognize the way that fear gets in our way. Sometimes, it's very obvious. Maybe you just straight up have anxiety and panic attacks. But other times, it's subtle. It's those times where, again, maybe you didn't want to get started on a project, or you avoided social situations, or you passed down an opportunity that you really wanted to take up and came up with a lot of, logical reasons why you should have done that. You rationalized it. But really, it's that fear that's speaking to us. And fear takes hold of our life all the time. Ask yourself this. When you go to make yourself a cup of coffee in the morning, do you feel really anxious? Really anxious about the same cup of coffee that you make every single day? Probably not. All right? If you were writing a blog post for your business, do you feel kind of antsy about that? A little unsure or uncertain? Have you put it off? If the answer is yes, then it's probably fear. There is a difference between doing something that we do every day all the time, the things that are just innate parts of our lives. Like maybe when you go to the bathroom, after you go to the bathroom, you just go. You don't think about it. You don't feel really anxious about if it's the right time or, how you're going to do it. You just go. You're used to it. You do it every day. But, it's those other things that we're not in the habit of doing that we start to question ourselves on. And, you gotta get rid of the fear. 2 tricks for that for me. One would be add apathy or excitement. So, for example, if you have to work with a client or do a job and you're feeling a little bit fearful of it, odd as it may sound, sometimes it helps to remind yourself how insignificant that project is, that client, like how small it is in your life, how unimportant it is. And I'm not telling you to carry that attitude throughout your whole entire life about everything, but when you're feeling that fear, sometimes you just have to recognize that you are literally a little speck of dust in the whole entire universe. Like your little self is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So that project of yours or those expectations that you think people have of you, not that big of a deal. So just accept where it is. And if you can't add apathy, add excitement. Try to find things to be excited about. Even if it's things like be excited that it's over. You signed up to volunteer for some PTA event that you're really dreading because you have to, spend time with another difficult parent. Maybe then you just try to add excitement. Try to think about how fun it's going to be to talk to some of the other parents there, or maybe just excited that it's done. Like maybe you've been dreading this all month, and then as soon as it's done, what are you going to do that's exciting? Be excited about being finished with it. And then the other thing is the worst case scenario. Take those things that you feel fearful of and really play out the worst case scenario. Sometimes it's just scarier when it's unknown. Sometimes if we remind ourselves the worst case scenario, if this plays out, like maybe you are emailing, again, a difficult client and you say, well, worst case scenario, they decide that they don't want to work with me and I have to refund their money and they don't like my product. no big deal. You move on. Life's not over. Sometimes when you just really play it out, you realize that it's not that big of a deal, and you feel a lot better about that too. Okay, word number 4. Define. So, define. What does that mean? When we're overcomplicating things, sometimes we forget to define what it is that we need to do. So, I have a friend who used to tell me this one saying or expression, and it's stuck in my head ever since, and it was the thing I probably needed to hear and still do need to hear all the time, and that is done is better than perfect. So the truth is, Mel Robbins, by the way, she talks about this in her book, and it's, fantastic advice. When you have a fixed mindset, you believe that, like the things that you do are who you are. Like if somebody told you that you are a smart kid growing up, you define yourself as smart. The moment that you get a bad grade on a test, you think, oh, I'm done being smart. I guess I'm not smart anymore. It's a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset. It's not that you were told you were a hard worker as a kid. You were told that you were smart. And if you get a bad grade, you suddenly think that trait is gone. But anyway, it's the same thing with perfectionism. And you have to remind yourself that done is better than perfect. Think about every situation which you've had a hard time completing something, overcomplicating something, took too much time on something, especially with, insignificant details. Yeah, No? You're just a baby. You're so happy, huh? Life's easy when you're a baby. Anyway, wouldn't all of those things have been better off done? Maybe sooner, with less grief or anxiety? Wouldn't it better be done rather than perfect? And honestly, was it perfect? The truth is, you can probably perfect anything and everything. You could critique anything to death, and that's truly what it would be, to death. You would critique so long that project would die. Your energy for that project would die. Your passion for that project would die. That moment, that memory, your time that you would have had, that you could have spent with other people, with your kids, making other memories, those would die. So don't perfect things to death. Done is better than perfect. So the best way to do that is define what is done. What is it that needs to be done? How does it need to be done? Define the definition of done. You have to plan a birthday party for your kid. Don't over perfect it to death. What's done? Okay, done would be invitation sent out, decorations picked out, venue and food picked out, and all within this budget. That's done. Make it done then, and stick with those parameters. You need a Christmas gift for your family. What's the definition of done? Done would be gift picked out, in the cart, purchased, whatever that might be. Define it. Define each step and decide what it means to be done. And then stick with the done definition, not the perfect definition. You need an email sent out to your email list, or a blog post sent out to your audience. Then pick what's done. I need a blog post about this. 5 different bullet points. It needs to be done within this time. That's the definition of done. Now do it. If you were your own boss, how would you make sure it happened? And then the last thing, and I should probably say this quick because I hear some kids running down the stairs. The last word to think about when trying to help yourself not overcomplicate things. 1 second. I'm taking a video. Is delete. And the reason I say the word delete is because often you are putting too many extra steps or making the process too long. Delete/delegate. Okay? You don't need to do everything. And let me tell you, if you think that you do,
what are you doing?
1 second. Then you're kind of being, I hate this word, but I'm going to say it, kind of being a control freak.
Stop
okay?
tapping me.
Yeah.
Stop tapping me. Stab it. Papa.
Okay. No more. My turn. So anyway, delete or delegate. No more. Delete or delegate. You don't have to do everything. And honestly, honestly, you might be better at a lot of the things you don't want to delegate. That might be the truth. You might be particular. You might have a method. You might not want your husband to fold the laundry because he always folds your pants wrong and you have to do it a second time. I don't know. But the truth is, it's better to delegate. And the more you get used to delegating, the less you'll get worried about being the person to have to take care of so much. You know, you're taking on way more than you need to. So start getting comfortable with other people doing things, especially if they're asking to help or they're willing or able to, you know, and they'll get better about things. And also you'll just realize how unimportant those things were that you thought you cared about. You know, it goes right back into lowering standards and having less. Anyway, that's about it. 5 things. Simplify, focus, fear, define, and delete. All right, I gotta go. Have a good day. Don't forget to subscribe.